Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 47. We have another busy video for today. We will finally reach the point where we can start producing vehicles in our assembly plant. It will just be a couple small test runs for now, so don't expect anything grand. We will only manage to replace the current asphalt pavers we have, and we will make a batch of 20 Beetles, which we will sell. Hopefully, we can stop importing too many foreign vehicles from now on. We will also finish the main buildings in Alexandgrad, and by the end of the episode, we will only have a couple track segments left to electrify before we can start using it. Which is something we desperately need. The lack of steel will be the reason why we won't be able to finish it today. Apart from those accomplishments, we will also build another rail distribution office, to prepare for the eventual removal of all the current dedicated freight lines we are running on the network. We will only get rid of one or two today, however. Fully restructuring our deliveries will take some planning, which I will have to prepare for episode 48. To start things off, I'll add fuel deliveries to the second depot we built in Alexandgrad, so trucks don't stop working whenever they need gas. I accidentally added the original one too, because that one was assigned to the first fuel distributor. Checking on both, we managed to sort it out. Next, I'll finally get around to placing some decorative trees around our second livestock farm. It's been long overdue. That should do it. It won't look so out of place now. Another thing I forgot to do in the last episode was the gravel pickup point for the emergency construction office. Now that we have the truck loading station, it will make things faster. Next, I will stop selling clothes. All I need to do is remove the customs house from the list of stops on the clothing distribution line. This will ensure that domestic needs are satisfied, even if the fields around Kirkimov aren't enough to satisfy an all-year-round production schedule. But this is temporary. We will need to build more rail distribution offices, but let's see if we can at least delegate this job to the ones we already have. We can use this office to sell any excess production. If the stored amount goes above 80%, we will sell a couple tons of the stuff. The other rail depot already has the town warehouses assigned for food deliveries. Very convenient for us. We only need to add clothes as things we can unload there, add the one in Kirkimov for pickups, and it's good to go. This will use the last of the open building assignments on that depot, so we will definitely need to build more. With this, the old clothing distribution line is no longer necessary. I will let it run for a little more, only allowing it to unload at the town warehouses. Once it's completely empty, I'll sell it. If you remember, we closed the last episode with steel being delivered to the vehicle assembly plant. With all the materials already delivered, we only need workers, and that place is ready to start making our own vehicles. For now, I'll only use a single train for that. Apart from the lack of line spacing for trains, which is still a pretty big sore spot for me, The main reason for it is that it's not going to be an industry we use 24/7. We will only order a certain number of certain vehicles, as we need them. And this place is officially open. The first vehicle ever produced will be a road paver we bought from the Western Powers. It is a much higher quality machine than the ones we use currently. To replace all of them, we will need to make 7 of the new model. And the iron mine in Alexandgrad is done. It is now just a matter of adding power, finishing the rails, and we can at long last double our steel production capacity. The track layers are already working on their end of that equation. Our job is to build the high voltage lines that will power the place. I will of course route the power through a switch first. Look! The first ever vehicle to be made inside the Republic. Unemployment in Mikhailovia is still the primary issue we need to solve. If we take a look at the heliport, we see workers constantly enter and leave, meaning they give up and go unemployed for that day, since all the local workplaces should be occupied already. I'm not entirely sure if it will work, but I might have an idea how to mitigate the problem. It won't fix it, but hopefully lower the problem at the very least. That fix will involve the aluminium industry, for which we will start laying the groundwork today. But that's for later on. Right now, let's just place the 4th rail DO, which we will use to sell excess production. Might as well use this place for it. The turnaround is no longer necessary. The ones we built at Mikhailovia and Alexandgrad are doing an admirable job at allowing trains to switch lanes. Nope. If we place them so close to each other, might as well line them up perfectly. That's better. In hindsight, maybe I should have mirrored it before placing it, so the big buildings would be on the same side. Oh well, not a big deal. Yeah. This will do nicely. Maybe a tiny bit further away from the main line tracks would have made it look a bit more even, but I'm not going to mess around with it anymore. To speed things up, I'll also add a road connection, so the regular COs can help out. I wanted to see if maybe I could squeeze in a 5th rail DO next to the first one we ever built, but the road made it unfeasible. And offsetting it would have interfered with the nearby junctions, so I dropped the idea. Alright, we have power. Except, not everywhere. It seems this substation is too close to the aggregate storages for helicopters to land, so we need to add a road, so the regular offices can reach it. The fact that we managed to place one was very lucky. Whoa, these parallel tracks came out a bit too close for comfort. I'm not going to rebuild them, we are already behind schedule as it is. Alright, the tracks are done. We only need to place the catenaries, and at long last, we can start using this place to make steel. We better let Sunflower leave the tracks before I designate them for the upgrade. If we do it ahead of it, it will get stuck. Alright. One more paver, and this production run is finished. What a neat little conga line of vehicles, delivering materials and workers to get this project done. We can do things real fast, if we don't spread ourselves too thin. Okay, since we have nothing better to do, except wait for things to be built, let's turn our attention to the next thing on the agenda. An aluminium factory. This place behind Adamski seems like a pretty decent place to do it. It has a bauxite and a coal deposit pretty close to each other. And we have the export power line close by, so we can also tap into that. For now, I will only place the area name tags to remind me where each deposit is. I will deal with the rest later. Once again, the coal is in a very unfortunate position, right on top of a hillside that is entirely bedrock. Flattening the terrain will take a while. Anyways, I mentioned that my potential fix for the unemployment problem in Mikhailovia will involve the aluminium industry. Well, since the coal mine is so high up, I think you can guess what form of transport I will use for the workers. Whoa. Good thing we have two power supplies for the rail network. With one on fire, the other one can still keep things rolling. And winter is over. It goes by so much faster when you don't need to worry about vehicles or population growth grinding to a halt. And it's done. Well, not entirely. We still need to finish building the last two rail segments before it's fully operational. Here, I wanted to see how things would look if I bridged the gap between the two buildings with gravel ground textures. Yeah. Not brilliant. I think I'll just place some bushes in the middle instead. The problem is that the gravel textures don't have a neat edge to them. The asphalt ones have those white lines, even the concrete ones have a sort of border around them. Gravel only really works as a filler, when all edges are obscured. Another reason why I should have left more space for the second rail DO. There is no room for vegetation. Okay, it's all finished. Even the substation in Alexandgrad is done. Before I forget, we will need to add a station crossing for the passenger drop-off. There is a very tiny amount of sports dissatisfaction in the center of Mikhailovia. It's only 1 or 2 in a handful of buildings, but let's nip it in the bud now, before it becomes a problem. Looking at the steel mill reminded me that the pavers should be done by now, and indeed they are. Oops, wrong type of paver. At first I wanted to do it one by one, to make sure I get it all done properly, but eventually it became a bit too fiddly. So I just went with the brute force method of selling it all, and randomly trying to reassign them wherever I thought they were originally. It will work most of the time, but I will run into a snag with the heli CO. And this is where I ran into a bug. I have one more paver left, and the original was here, in the heli construction office. The thing is, when I built that second external landing pad, and bought that third passenger helicopter, the CO was already full. There was no more room in it. But I was still able to buy that helicopter, basically leaving me with -1 vehicle slots. Now that I sold the old paver, I am back to 0, since the new helicopter jumped up 1 slot. So, unless I sell one of the choppers, I will not be able to reassign that paver. And that would be crazy. So until we can make our own helicopters, I guess we will have to do without having a paver in the heli CO. I wanted to see if maybe we should start replacing the harvesters, but the work speed difference was so minor that I decided against it. We will use the Western models for new farms, but there is no need to replace the ones we already have. Since the car factory had nothing better to do, I decided to make a short run of 20 personal vehicles. The VW Beetle will do just fine for it. It will allow us to set up and test a special rail line, which we will use to export these one-time productions. If this factory was operating 24/7, we could do a dedicated line to export vehicles, but the main purpose of it is to make vehicles for domestic use, not to export. Whenever I feel like it, I will still do a couple of these mass-produced batches, but that's not why I built it. For that, we will need a second factory, sometime in the future. Now, this is where I will hesitate a little bit. Reorganizing the entire freight haulage network on our railroad will take quite a bit of planning. Something I didn't want to do while recording. I will still end up doing it for the electronics distribution line, but that is as far as I will take it today. At least the old clothing train was empty, so we can sell it, and delete its old line. Okay, so this is where I decided to at least use this new rail DO for the consumer electronics. Again, first step is to remove the customs house from the list of stops on the dedicated distribution line. And, since I'm already set on doing it fully, I also removed the pickup station, so now that train is going back and forth between the two towns, unloading a small amount of electronics each time. Now it's just a matter of telling one of the old rail DOs to move the finished products to the town warehouses, and to tell the new office to export it, if the storage in Alexandgrad reaches 80%. Of course, this is temporary, just a demonstration of the system I will use. I will most likely end up completely deleting all assignments, and starting from scratch. I just need to test out different systems to see which one will let me do it the most effectively, and also let me set it up rather quickly, so I don't bore you guys to death. I will also need to make an exhaustive list of all the materials and goods we produce, so I can make a checklist, and tick things off as we rebuild the entire freight network. I want to include everything. Construction materials, food, meat, components, everything. If it's connected to the rail network, I want to have it on the list of possible exports, while leaving a considerable stockpile for domestic use. Also, just to be on the safe side, I'll tell the exporting DO to use shorter trains, so it will only export in small amounts. And with that, it's done. Once the old distribution train is empty, we can sell it, and delete its route from the list. So, since we have nothing better to do, let's turn our attention to the new aluminium industry. Just as I suspected, the coal deposit is too far away from the Adomsky construction offices, so we cannot use them for terrain alteration. This is as far as we can possibly reach. Way too far away from the hillside, so we will need to build a temporary CO. On top of this mountain will be fine. At first, I wanted to add a dirt road, but then I thought, why? We don't really need it, the helicopters can build it just fine, and it's that small CO that doesn't have an internal fuel storage, so it's doubly unnecessary. With both sides of the junction finished, we can at least get rid of the turnaround. We still need the crossing though. We can only delete that after everything else is finished. Oh wow, that's a lot of steel. Maybe I should have limited the amount a bit more aggressively. Oh well, at least we don't need to worry about it for a while. But, with the production run on the VW Beetles close to finishing, we can set up the export train. I'll just give it 3 open wagons to load the cars onto. It will have 3 stops. One for picking up the finished vehicles at the assembly plant, the second one will be the customs house, so it can sell them for a nice profit, and the third stop will be the train depot. If you finish a route at the depot, then the train will run at one time, and will automatically park itself when done. I decided to use the southern border crossing for this one, because the train would need to make a round trip around Alexandgrad to be able to reach the train depot. With this route, it doesn't actually go through the town station, taking up valuable space reserved for passenger trains. It seems we were a bit too fast. There were still 3 Beetles left in the production queue. That's a pretty big patch of grass. Let's get rid of it. There. Now the train will head back to the depot without me having to do anything, and park itself until further notice. And it dutifully avoided going through the town passenger station, not clogging up the already quite busy area. And that's that. If we ever have vehicles to sell, we can just tell it to go for a round, and it will sell everything waiting at the car factory. We only need to make sure not to have anything there that we want to use at home. Now, before you ask, the reason why I bought these machines just now for the temporary CO, is because I was lazy. Building the necessary roads would have been a pain in the butt. And it's temporary. Okay, we are ready to level the ground for the coal mine. It is on exposed bedrock, so it will take quite a while. To speed things up, I will use small footprint buildings, like cable car towers, and later on, a cable car station, as yellow ghost image leveling tools. Not only is it faster to use that method over the regular ground working tools, they also allow much steeper slopes. Okay, let's switch over to the cable car station. It has a slightly bigger footprint. Let's try using the mine from now on. As long as we get a yellow image, we are good. Not quite yet. Again, just be glad you watched this at 2 times speed. There we go. We are in the final stretch. Another serious pandemic. I am now fairly confident we can deal with it, but I will still check on our hospitals, just to be sure. Incidentally, I will also check on the satisfaction on these houses, and it's pretty good. No important complaints, and everyone's working. Very good. Now that we have the coal mine figured out, let's see about the bauxite sites. For now, I will only place one, and I highly doubt we will even build that one. If my calculations are even remotely reliable, we will need at least 3, most likely 4 mines on this relatively smaller patch. They will be able to supply a single processing unit with enough raw bauxite for continuous operation. At the end of the production chain, if all goes well, we will have an aluminium plant operating at around 50% efficiency. Could be 100% if we doubled up on everything, but for the occasional helicopter or plane construction, I think 50% will be enough. I won't really rely on exporting too much of it, only the excess. I'm still a bit embarrassed how much steel ended up at the vehicle factory. I hope I remember to limit it to more reasonable amounts when I set up the new freight network in the next episode. To ensure that the track layers can continue working on the Alexandgrad tracks, let's make a special delivery to Lukovo, so the rail CO can get some steel to work with. I really should have built this external storage from the start. The speed of loading is much faster this way. Okay, let's discuss our plans for the next episode. We will of course deal with the whole freight situation. I might need to add 1 or more additional rail distribution offices to make it work, but I will only know that once I worked out how exactly it will be set up. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. One DO will deal with internal distribution, the other will deal with exports. The complications come in when it comes to organizing it. Do I keep construction materials in one DO, foodstuffs in another, components in a third? But components are also construction materials, so there's that. Also, I will need to keep upgradability in mind, so if I keep adding new industries, I will need it to be easily expandable. So many things to consider. I just might give up the current setup, and simply build a rail yard with several distribution offices lined up in a nice and orderly fashion, so I can simply keep building new ones as needed. There are a few rail DOs on the Steam Workshop, I might take advantage of some of those. But that's just an idea. First, I want to see how things go with the current setup. If we do go down that road, that will be a relatively long-term project. Building the offices themselves isn't really all that complicated, but the amount of track laying that would be required would take quite a long time. Which reminds me. Maybe we could add a couple more microbuses to the rail CO's commuter line. With the new houses around the Mutagrad train station, I think we can afford to use more people for it. And we could use homemade buses for it. Yeah, I'm liking the idea already. Anyways, I hope you liked the video. If you did, dropping a like and subscribing to the channel just might motivate me to make more. Until then,